Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, I saw the nicest thing on Twitter this weekend. You tweeted, "I enjoy working with at Tom Orr 4," and I thought, "Oh, that's so sweet. That's so nice." And all the replies were like, "Did Tom steal your phone and write this? What? I'm nice. I'm fine. What the heck, people?"
Yeah, and full disclosure, then, as I revealed, I was only tweeting that to make a point in a group text about how people can tweet anything and it doesn't mean anything. And, I showed that there. I'm not afraid to uh, put fake tweets out there. And, but it's not like that. I shouldn't say I don't enjoy working with you. But let's just leave it at that. So, Tom, let's get started on this show because there's a lot to talk about. We don't usually get into the NFL here, and we won't too much. But I am a Bears fan. I grew up a Bears fan. How crazy of a Bears fan usually depends on how good the Bears are. And so I'm not actually a very crazy Bears fan because, and again, when you live in Columbus, you're stuck watching the Browns or the Bengals. So you don't really get to actually watch the NFL. This weekend, or on Thursday, my Bears drafted, they moved up, they draft Justin Fields. They finally have a quarterback for the first time since Cade McNown. So
That's the darkest thing you've ever said on this podcast.
So it's a great moment for Bears fans to know that you have a future and it's not tied to Mitch Trubisky or Jim Miller. I mean, when Eric Kramer is like one of the best quarterbacks in franchise history, you want to talk about dark. So we're talking about 15-year career here, Tom. Over the next 15 years, I am setting the over-under on Bears Super Bowls at 14 and a half. Where are you going?
If you're going to do the miniature Ditka thing, Hurricane Ditka and all that, you know how you make me do the Australian accent all the time? You're going to have to do the super fans accent. So go ahead and ask me. Go ahead and ask me that again in the in the Chris Farley Bears jacket starter jacket accent.
I'm terrified to do that because it won't be good.
Do you think that ever stops me? No,
that's true. But you're more of like a fool. You're like a jester, where I'm a serious professional. But like, I don't know, like Tom, 14 and a half Super Bowls over under. Where are you going?
I mean, I'm going to go under, but only because I'm concerned there might be a labor stoppage that would cancel one season. So then
that's a good point.
Yeah. I think the whole audience right now is just have their minds blown that your favorite team isn't the Chiefs. What? How does that? Yeah, I like that pick a lot for Chicago. That was you look at the reaction from Bears fans. It was like this, like that you could just hear the hallelujah chorus playing behind all of the tweets. Like, oh my gosh, they have a quarterback. And I mean, you want to do over unders. How many quarterbacks picked ahead of Justin Fields? There were 3 of them. How many quarterbacks picked ahead of Justin Fields have worse careers than Justin Fields? Because I'll set the over under at 1.5.
Yeah, I was going to say 1.5.
I think there's a decent possibility the answer is over because Trey Lance is like potentially good, but there's not a lot of track record there. And Zach Wilson's playing for the Jets, which means, sorry, friend, you're doomed.
You say there's not a lot of track record with Trey Lance, but he did play one game this past year.
He did play one game this past year, and he did play the year before, and he was very good the year before, but you're playing at the FCS level, and like sometimes that translates just fine, and sometimes like not so much. There's enough different like just little like question marks there that I assume that they must have known that they were trading up specifically for Trey Lance because you wouldn't have traded up and just going, yeah, we're going to pick one of these guys. I think all the Mac Jones stuff, like I cannot believe people were actually stupid enough to think Mac Jones was going to go number 3 overall. Like that never made an ounce of sense to me. But yeah, I think there's a decent possibility Justin Fields has at least the second best career of all the quarterbacks. And, I mean, who knows? You never know with injuries. You never know with like, hey, Urban Meyer just might not work in the NFL. You have no idea. But yeah, I think there's a decent possibility Fields has the best or second best career of the top 4 quarterbacks taken in that draft.
Yeah, I mean, I could see him having the best. It's just quarterbacks are such a crapshoot. So to even like say I guarantee or anything like that, I'm not that stupid. But I am looking forward to it. I'll have to figure out a way to watch Bears games this year, assuming he eventually starts. Andy Dalton will. Who knows? A patella will explode or something like that in the preseason, and then it becomes Justin Fields. It was nice to watch all of these tweets, videos from fans and fans who are media, like Chicago Bears fans who are like other forms of media, and see Justin Fields go, and they're just going crazy with joy and showing their reactions to it. It's always fun. So the NFL season can't get here quickly enough for me. Just let's get rid of this summer right now, Tom. If all it's going to do is rain, let's get rid of it. But no, I'm looking forward to it. It'll be fun. We need to talk about Jameson Williams. But before that, Tom, I want to do one of my favorite things. Since you made me do an accent, I'm going to give you a name from the past. Your favorite thing. An old Ohio State Buckeye, or maybe a new Ohio State Buckeye. A name from the past. I need to go ahead. You got something to say?
I thought about this game this weekend, and I wonder if it's related to the tweet that I saw about an old Chicago Bears draftee. Was it?
No, I don't think so.
No, okay. There was a tweet about the Chicago Bears picked 2 people in 2 Ohio State Buckeyes in the first round of the 1939 draft or something, and it was one of them was a name that wasn't Gust Zarnis or whatever, but it was like there was one of them, Merle something or whatever, and I was like, I'm pretty sure that was a name Tony gave me about 2 years ago in that stupid guess the years game. All right, yes, go on.
Well, and one of the reasons I'm bringing it up is because yesterday, if you see the backdrop behind me, yesterday was the anniversary of the first ever Ohio State football game back in 1890, where the Buckeyes defeated Ohio Wesleyan 20-14. And you can see this squad of toughs and mercenaries behind me looking pretty good. But I'll just give you one name, Tom. And if you can give me within is it 3 years either way of. Is that what the old rule was?
I think 3 or 4, yeah.
Let's go 3. And as a bonus, if you can also give me his jersey number, which at least I'm giving you years where there are jersey numbers. So keep that in mind. So here you go. One name, Albert Zuchengo.
Albert Zuchengo. I feel like that's a name that I've seen in the media guide and thought, because when you're looking for the last great Ohio State player with the letter Z in his last name or something like that. Albert Zuchengo feels like a name that I saw that was more recent than you would think. Like it might have been like a 1950s or late 40s name, because it seems very much like, that's a guy from some town in rural Ohio that doesn't exist anymore and played in, 19 and Dickety 6. But I think that was more recent. So I'm going to say 1948.
And his jersey number?
Let's go with that. That sounds like a small man's name. So I'm going to say 31.
Actually, you're closer with the year with the jersey, Tom.
Okay.
It's 1938. So you're way off. And his jersey number was 2.
Oh.
So, I
wonder if the OSU marketing department had a great, like AZ2 thing, like you have for Chris Olave. Like,
I don't think they did.
No.
Tweeting wasn't big back then. It was more like farming.
It sounds like a great time to be alive if Twitter wasn't around.
Part-time football player, part-time draining the great black swamp of Ohio. So it was tough life. So, Tom, let's talk about Jameson Williams. Entered the transfer portal last week. We weren't able to talk about it because we already had a show in the can, and it's like, well, we're not gonna record another show when we've already got 2 done.
Good news, we get to do this again next week, so we can just talk about it then.
So, yeah, exactly. And so he enters the portal, which let me just ask you, because we talked about it on, we'll talk about it on tomorrow's morning scoop, but you didn't get to talk about it too much. Were you surprised when you found out he was in the portal?
It wasn't a complete shock because he was, the wide receiver room is one of those spots where, I mean, like Mookie Cooper transferred last year and it was just, or was it it was last fall or this off season?
Late last fall.
Last fall. Okay.
Season was still happening.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, he transferred last fall. And it was just like, there are certain spots where if you come in and you're a top 100 kind of guy, and then you look and you're just buried on the depth chart and you're, third team. And this is, like Max Ray transferred. Max Ray was someone that I think when you and I have kind of, had the hypothetical, like who might transfer this year, Max Ray's name has been on that list for like 3 years because it was just, okay, it doesn't seem, he came in with enough talent and enough expectation that he was probably thinking, okay, second year I'll be a starter, third year I'll be a starter, and then maybe go to the NFL. And you're 3 years in, you're 4 years in, and you're not anywhere close to breaking into that starting rotation. Like that's the type of guy that ends up transferring a lot. Jameson Williams, he came in, was a starter last year, but just didn't have a big year. And then this spring seemed to have lost his starting job. So it wasn't a complete shock. He was not necessarily, there were probably, if I was going to put together a list of, I don't remember what we set the over under on transfers for the offseason, 4.5 or 5.5 or something like that. He would not necessarily have been in my top 2 of guys to expect to transfer. But if I put a list of 10, 12 guys together, he would have been on there because you don't obviously expect 10, 12 guys to transfer in an offseason, but it's like, these are the types of guys who end up transferring, guys who have lost their starting job, guys who have come in and been there and gotten passed by younger guys on the depth chart. Those are the guys who you typically see in the transfer portal. And, he's not, like I said, he wouldn't have been my first pick of guy to expect to go, but he would have been on that list somewhere. What was more interesting to me was where he landed after he did transfer.
Yeah, ends up at Alabama. And you mentioned being demoted. He was the starting X last year. They moved Garrett Wilson there this spring in order to get Jackson Smith and Jigba in the slot with the ones. And so there was, you move him down and you're thinking, well, okay, they'll still play him. They'll get that 6-man rotation going that we know they'd prefer. And so this just shows how deep they are and that the intention will be there to play him. Although I don't know where he would have been, whether he would have stayed at X or would he go to Z. And even then you're looking at, you see how Marvin Harrison played this spring. At the X, what Julian Fleming is capable of. We saw him last year at the Z. He's competing with those guys to, at either position, wherever he ends up, but he's still going to be behind Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson. And so then he decides to go to Alabama where they lose Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle. They still have John Mechie there. They've got other guys. It's Alabama. It's not like it's empty. So there's maybe a quicker path to playing time, but he may get there and realize that it's no different and that there is depth there as well. And this is a guy with 15 career receptions. So while that is maybe a product of how they used him rather than how talented he is, I'm fascinated to see. I would love to see that guy. What's he look like with 5, 6, 7 targets a game? Because I think there are going to be moments, Tom, of just spectacularness, which is a word.
It is now. He is someone who there's a real broad range of possible outcomes here for him because he could go there and he's the 4th wide receiver there too, or the 5th wide receiver. And, they might sling the ball around a little more than Ohio State does this year. So maybe, even if you are the 4th receiver, you're getting more passes thrown your way there, maybe. And the top end talent at the wide receiver position is probably not the Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson level top end talent. So maybe you're getting, a more even distribution of passes through the top 4, 5, 6 wide receivers at Alabama. But he could also go there and just turn into Devin Smith. I mean, he has the speed. I don't have any strong real opinions on Bryce Young, who is the guy who's likely to take over as their starting quarterback this fall. He was a 5-star guy a couple of years ago. You saw him at the very end of the national championship game if you did not turn it off and discuss. So he's someone who I think, I don't have any like firsthand scouting opinions on him, but my impression from what I've read is good, strong arm, like a guy who will be able to drive the ball downfield basically. And if you have that and Jameson Williams can just run those fly routes, like you could turn into a Devin Smith there. That is a possibility. It's not necessarily the most likely possibility, but Jameson Williams having 30 catches for 750 yards and 8 touchdowns this year, something like that wouldn't completely shock me either. But he could, like I said, he could end up. You're going in the summer. How quickly can you pick up the playbook and all that kind of stuff, and how different is their offense from Ohio State's offense, and all of that stuff those are all questions that still need to be answered. But he could be a real difference maker there. He could be just what he was at Ohio State, just with a different helmet and jersey.
Yeah, well, another thing to keep in mind, he'll be going against the SEC defenses, which makes things much easier for an offense and a receiver. So that's something to watch. I do think this is maybe an opportunity for Buckeye fans for the first time since Brian Hartline has come to Columbus to criticize him, aside from his playing days. Because if Jameson Williams goes to Alabama and lights it up, that's Brian Hartline's fault. That's Ryan Day's fault for not utilizing that guy more. And when you effectively bench him, that's the receiver coach, his decision to do that. And so there could be some criticism for the first time coming Brian Hartline's way. It'll be interesting to see how he handles that. Not that we would get to talk to him maybe once in camp, and then so nothing will be done by then, and maybe once during the season. And I'm just, he's not a guy that Buckeye fans have had a chance to criticize so far. And maybe the lone assistant coach who is part of that club. So maybe it would be good for Jameson Williams to blow up. That way Brian Hartline can know how the other half lives.
Yeah, Brian Hartline has lived a pretty peaceful existence since taking over as a wide receiver coach for Ohio State. And, that will happen when you're recruiting literally the best of any position group at any time in the history of the entire Ohio State program, and also having those guys produce on the field pretty consistently, and also having the side of the ball that got criticized for not being able to perform being the other side of the ball. It's like, yeah, that is a pretty good recipe for having everyone in the Ohio State fan base think this guy is fantastic. And you have the natural built in, like, oh, I remember him when he was a player. And it was, yeah, he is set up to have a nice charmed existence in Columbus. So yeah, but you're right. I mean, I saw something on Twitter, and, this was not someone who was a person of any great authority, but talking about how Brian Hartline never develops any wide receivers. And it's like, well, what do you mean no one develops any? He never develops any wide receivers. What about Garrett Wilson or Chris Olave? It's like, well, those guys were highly ranked, so it doesn't count. It's like, oh, okay. Well, I mean, Chris Olave wasn't very highly ranked, but it doesn't count because it doesn't fit my argument. But that's we can do a whole other show on twitter.com later. But yeah, no, that jumped out to me because it was like, number one, that's a stupid argument, but also number two, like, you don't ever see people criticizing Brian Hartline. So when it happens, it does jump out to you like, oh, wow, that is, that's crazy. But yeah, I think it's probably a little premature. Like, and even if Jameson Williams does go and have a great career at Alabama, that you don't criticize Ryan Day for Joe Burrow leaving and having a good career at LSU, because Ryan Day had a good, Ryan Day had a better quarterback in 2018 than Joe Burrow was, and Ryan Day had a very good quarterback last year as well. So it's not like he was pushing him out and replacing him with Joe Bauserman. So, if the Ohio State wide receiver production continues to be very high, even if Jameson Williams goes to Alabama and has a great career, it's like, just tip your cap, feel good for him because he's a nice kid and a very popular teammate. And you don't have to have someone who's wrong in a situation. Like, everyone can be right, and it can be okay.
Boy, I disagree there. I disagree with that one. But yes, then when he does win the Heisman this year, I'm sure he will thank Ohio State just as Joe Burrow did. And I'm sure that will make Buckeye fans feel totally better. So let's talk about this Kai Stokes commitment, Tom. But before we do, Wes Siegenthaler.
Instead of guessing a year, can I guess where he's from? Because that feels very
no.
Gonna say that feels New Philadelphia, Ohio to me. But Wes Siegenthaler. See, I would have guessed sometime in the 1930s, but you just gave me a 1930s, so maybe it's 1926.
And his jersey number?
Well, the last one was 2, so this one's either going to be 3 or like 98. So let's go with 98.
Boy, you're way off on both. He played in 1987 and 1988.
He did not, did he?
He did. That's why. That's a very 40s and 30s name. That's why I knew I would get you. And he wore number 4.
Oh man,
maybe he was a punter or quarterback or something of that nature. But I thought you had a chance at that.
I never have a chance at any of them. That's the bit. I never have a chance at any of these, no matter what I guess. It's like, I think it was on last year's team. How do you not know that? Like, what? There was no one named Merle on last year's team.
No, there was. I'm shocked you didn't know about him. So Kai Stokes commits this weekend the number 675 player overall, number 56 athlete, number 89 player out of Florida, a safety from Armwood, which is the same school that produced and sent Brian Snead to Ohio State. Tom, you had Dominic Smith on, I think, the Morning Scoop recently, and the show title was, "Who is the next Florida commit for the Buckeyes?" I don't know that I got to listen to the show. So did you guys get this one right?
We did not, and I think the thing was had not even been offered. I think at the time that Dominique and I recorded that show,
yeah, because it was a quick offer.
It was a very quick offer, and immediate commitment. So yeah, I think we're gonna show Dominique and me, but mostly Dominique. We're gonna show him some grace here, and because he got the offer, and then I think he committed in 4 days or something like that. So that's a little bit a little bit out of left field, and I think that was also. To me, that was a position where I was not necessarily expecting an out of left field offer and commit, because I think there was this idea that Ohio State has, the top couple guys they're in line to potentially get, or they're in the running to get, and they, so you're only going to take 2, so you're probably going to take these 2 guys or these, and all of a sudden, like, hey, there's this guy getting offered way out of left field, and then that I think sort of raises some questions about how good do they really feel about some of the other guys that I think a lot of people on the internet have already kind of written into the class.
Well, to look at his, and I'm guessing he probably blew up at a 7-on-7 or one of these camps, because just over the last month, he picked up an Alabama offer on April 20th, April 21st, Georgia, April 22nd, Miami, 22nd, Florida, 22nd, LSU, 22nd, Auburn, the 24th was Notre Dame and Tennessee, and then Ohio State offers on the 26th of April, and then a week later they get a commitment. And so this is a guy, fast riser, like I said, 6'2", 185 pounds safety, a guy that fits well to what Ohio State does with that position. I'm expecting Tom for his ranking probably to rise a bit, because again, it's not because of the commitment necessarily. It's because he's camped, he's done the 7-on-7s, and other schools have seen him, and you see these offers, and clearly he's not the number 685th player or whatever when you look at the offers that have come in recently. So it is interesting to see them take a guy, a safety, when they, I guess, felt pretty good about a couple of other safety prospects. But then in this Ohio State offense, in this Ohio State defense, you have so many different defensive backs and different defensive backs roles. So certainly an athlete here who could play multiple safety positions, and Ohio State has multiple safety positions.
Yeah, and I had Mark Givler on the Morning Scoop on Tuesday, and he talked about the fact that he expects Stokes to be that kind of like one high safety. Mm-hmm. That's where he project him, but he has the kind of coverage background that if you need to move him to that slot spot, he should be able to do that too, which is good, because a lot of this is projection, and if there's like one thing you can do, and the only place you fit is as the one high guy, then if you turn out to not be able to do that at the college level, it's like, well, we got nothing for you here. So it's good to be able to have a guy who's a little bit, has some a little bit of flexibility there. I mean, he size wise is similar to Josh Proctor, which, I mean, that kind of probably gives you some idea what kind of player you're talking about here. The recruiting rankings don't match the Josh Proctor recruiting rankings, but Ohio State, Alabama, Auburn, Georgia, LSU, Notre Dame, Miami, Oregon, like that's a whole bunch of teams. And it's funny is you've got all of those, but I mean, if you want to know what kind of kid this is off the field, you also have Dartmouth as an offer. You also have Vanderbilt as an offer. Like those are when you see some of those schools in there as well, that kind of gives you an idea of some of the, like off the field academically, like what, if you have an offer from Dartmouth, you probably have your stuff together pretty reasonably well. So that's probably something else. If it's someone who there's no off field concerns about at all, that this is a real high makeup, high character kid. Like that's the kind of kid you're going to be a little more willing to just throw an offer out to, even if you haven't seen him in person. And just to circle back to Wes Siegenthaler, he was from Massillon, which is basically right next to New Philadelphia. So I'm going to give myself full credit for that one.
Well, when you say full credit, do you mean no credit? Because that's how I take it. So Kai Stokes, currently the lowest rated member of Ohio State's recruiting class, taking the grade down considerably. They are now the number 3 ranked class in the nation, first in the Big Ten, but that doesn't even mean anything anymore. Not until maybe Penn State and Indiana can lift up the conference. Did Kai Stokes, you mentioned Dartmouth and Vanderbilt. I wonder if he had a Michigan offer. That would really tell you if he had things sorted out off the field.
He did not. It's at least not listed as one of his programs of interest on his recruiting profile.
Well, that's a plus then.
Northwestern is listed though, so that's another. I mean, that's basically Michigan in that they haven't won a college football playoff game. So
true. So you mentioned he looks like he can play the one high, but also could do other things. And you look at the other defensive commits like CJ Hicks. He can do a bunch of different things. Jaheim Singletary, probably just a lockdown corner, which is certainly fine. That's okay too for what Ohio State likes to do. Gabe Powers, linebacker, flexing to a defensive end, a rush outside guy. J.R. Brown could do inside or outside, I think, in terms of the cover corner or the slot corner or even the nickel. So it continues to they lose Deshaun McCullough, which, given everything that he could have done, the versatility there is a blow. But you get a guy who could end up just anywhere in the back end. So you continue to you don't lock these guys into one thing. You hope you know what you're getting. You project that you know what you're getting. But then once they get here, sometimes tackles become guards. And sometimes corners, if they can't cover, just don't do anything. And so you try to avoid those. And they've done a pretty good job of avoiding that over the years. So that is Kai Stokes. Tom, who do you think the next one out of Florida is going to be?
I'll have to have Dominique Smith on the show again to get the answer to that question, because I don't have it.
I can't wait until June when things are just going crazy and we can just sit back and you'll have 4 episodes of the Morning Scoop on recruiting a week, and I'll do the bare minimum. Just it's going to be a vacation month, I would hope, but I shouldn't have said that because now something is going to go crazy, and the FBI is going to be investigating all of Ohio State and be sitting at sitting in buildings on campus for 14 hours a day waiting for the council to come out and let us know and what color smoke. So I'm going to delete all of this from the show right now because we don't want to speak any of that into existence, because I just like covering football, and some basketball on the side.
Football is fun. Agreed.
So, Sam, how fun was football for John Derbyshire?
That sounds like he was actually a varsity fox hunting person. So I'm going to say he was on the 1871 London School of Economics fox hunting team.
And his sweater number?
1. Everyone is 1.
No, he played. He played in 1963. That's a guy you could have gotten. Number 15.
How do they have all these time travelers on these teams? I don't understand that. Like,
You think I'm just picking these names out at random? I'm looking for old timey names. Dang it!
See, this is the most spiteful thing you do on this show, and I know that you know that. I just want to make sure the listeners know that.
I'm not even going to ask you about Wilson Stump.
1977.
34 and 35.
Oh, those are both numbers, jerseys. So basically there.
He also wore two different jerseys. So you had to double it, twice the opportunity to get it right. That's why I didn't ask you that one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
too easy. Too easy.
So, Tom, let's talk about our favorite subject, the Michigan Wolverines.
Speaking of too easy, hey.
So, assistant defensive coach, a defensive assistant coach, Ryan Osborne, was on Twitter. And so Michigan State does not have a player drafted this year for the first time in 80 freaking years, which is an insane length of time to go without a draft pick. And so that gets tweeted out, and Osborne quote tweets it with "hate to see it," taking a shot at Michigan State, who beat Michigan last year. I don't know if anybody knows that.
That a fact.
It is indeed a fact. So Michigan State beats Michigan. He takes a shot at them for producing no NFL guys. Meanwhile, Michigan, I believe, had 9 drafted. And it's like, well, what do you went 2-4 last year with 9 NFL draft picks, and you've got more on the way, because I saw another coach tweeting, like the Big Ten Network tweeted out something like, who's going to be the first Big Ten player taken in 2022? And all of these Michigan guys are saying Aiden Hutchinson. And it's like, well, okay, you have all of this NFL talent. I wouldn't be bragging about it if you're only going 2-4 or 7-5 or whatever. It's like it makes all of the coaches look bad, especially Jim Harbaugh, when you have guys the NFL likes, but you can't do anything with, and then combine that with Osborne, taking joy in something terrible happening to Michigan State and not having a player drafted in almost 100 years. It's so Tom. It's so Michigan.
It was just, I saw it and I was like, my first thought was, okay, I don't know who this is, so I wonder if this is just some random Michigan fan. Like, no, he's is this his first year on the staff there? That was not a name that I recognized.
I'm going to assume it is, because I'm sure we would have seen other tweets of his in the past.
Yeah, I looked at it and I was like, that was a choice. Like, that was definitely a thing you could have done on Twitter. I don't know why you would think that was a good idea. Like, just tweet less. That's a good tweet less. Arguably never. I think that is the best way to handle that situation. But yeah, if you are a program that has a reputation for bringing in players, not doing anything with them, and then crapping them out in the NFL in about the same as they came in, or maybe a little bit worse. We brought in the number 2 player in the country. We got him drafted number 23 overall. Like, that's not actually development. That's actually not a great thing. I mean, I wouldn't think you'd want to draw attention to it. Like, that's just, I mean, first of all, you're supposed to be Michigan. You're supposed to be, barely paying attention to Michigan State. Like, they're supposed to be beneath you, and you're just supposed to be, casually dismissing them as this also ran. And it's like, oh, we have to take this particular shot at this team that we lost to last year. Like, that's drawing a lot of attention to things that you really don't want to. Like, that's like people who wear an outfit that is not particularly flattering for their body type. Like, you might want to change out of those bell bottoms, because they're drawing a lot of attention to areas you don't want them drawn to. Like, that's basically Michigan as a program right now.
I like that you compared their recruiting and then leaving as like a food that does not get digested. Go in and then they come out the same way, which, maybe that's a very apt analogy.
White Castle, the program.
It is Matty Dudek, who is a recruiting coordinator who left, would sometimes tweet some really bad tweets, and Michigan fans hated him for it. And so
hashtag winningest. Every tweet was hashtag winningest. Yes, go on.
And so now they've replaced him with another bad tweeter. So I guess for me, that's that's a good thing. But to Michigan State, as you said, is the program that does not exist to them. And so by giving them, like, now Michigan is speaking Michigan State into existence and acknowledging them, and that's a win for Michigan State. And so maybe he is a new Michigan guy, because this is not something that a Michigan man would do. First of all, that's Fielding Yost. He didn't tweet, and that's how you operate. But if Jim Harbaugh does not beat Michigan State this year, do you even, because the game is in East Lansing this year, I believe, right? Do you even let him back on the bus?
I don't think they're flying back the 45 minutes. No. I mean, there are a couple, I think we talked about this a week or two ago, but there are a couple of games on that schedule that are just like, if you lose this game, you're fired. Like, you are definitely fired. Like, do not lose to Rutgers. Do not lose to Michigan State. Like, don't lose to Ohio State by 40 points. Like, there's a few of them that are just like, you can't, there's no coming back from that. And yeah, Michigan State is definitely one. I mean, Bo Schembechler, I think I've talked about this before, but Bo Schembechler used to record the Big Ten ticket show at a TV station I used to work at in Detroit. So I would get to just every Friday during football season, like, go over and casually shoot the breeze with Bo Schembechler for 20 minutes, which was one of the cooler things I've done. And he would talk about how his first year at Michigan, everyone remembers, hey, they beat Ohio State, 1969, that famous game, 24-12 in Ann Arbor. And what you don't remember about the team was they lost to Michigan State. That was Bo's first year. They lost to Michigan State. And it was one of those things where, he got hired and all the talk was about Ohio State. And they lost to Michigan State. And it was basically like, yeah, don't do that again. Do not do that again. That is like, we didn't talk about it earlier. Don't do that. Do not lose to Michigan State. That is not something that Michigan does. And, now that's just something Michigan does all the time. That's just, it has become almost routine. And, you could argue that the most damaging thing Jim Harbaugh has done during his entire time as Michigan's head coach to Ohio State's playoff hopes was that 2015 game with that bad snap on the punt where Michigan State just pulls a win out of their behind. And that was the difference between Ohio State going to the Big Ten championship game that year and Michigan State. Because of that one game, otherwise Michigan State would have had a couple losses. Ohio State, even with that weird loss to Michigan State, probably still gets into that Big Ten championship game, probably beats Iowa, probably goes to the college football playoff that year. So that, has trouble with the snap game. That is probably the single most damaging thing Jim Harbaugh has done to Ohio State's playoff hopes at any point in his Michigan career.
His crowning glory, if you will. Good for him. I have said this before. Like, one of my favorite things in sports was always the Mark D'Antonio smile as the last seconds of the clock are running out over a win over Michigan. Just because he loved that, beating Michigan as much as Jim Tressel or Urban Meyer or anybody, and I think it meant more to him than anybody else. And of course, that is now done as he threw put the program in the pits, and we'll see if they get out of there. I don't even know if they have to. As long as they keep beating Michigan, that's enough.
That's the thing. It's like, you can go 6-6, but if you're beating Michigan every year, like, they don't care. They're fine. Like, the expectation is not like, I think there was a point during the D'Antonio era where it was like 10 wins is the expectation. It's like, that's not the expectation of Michigan State. The expectation of Michigan State is, go to a bowl and beat Michigan every other year. And if you beat Michigan every other year and you're just kind of consistently a 7-win team, 8-win team, as long as you're beating Michigan every other year, you probably have just about a job forever. That's a program that, is a little bit like Kentucky in the SEC, where it's just like, yeah, you win 7-8 games, you go to the Music City Bowl every year, and just keep it interesting long enough to get us to basketball season. That's basically the goal. And, there's an argument to be made that is a fantastic job to have, because it's, those are actually very similar programs in a lot of ways, where they're going to make their living on getting that second tier of kids out of Ohio and finding the kind of the diamonds in the rough and polishing them up and being a development program and all that kind of stuff. And, those are very, very similar programs. And at Kentucky, if you're winning 7-8 games a year, you're probably fine forever. At Michigan State, if you're winning 7 games a year and you beat Michigan every other year, like, you're probably fine forever.
And you could probably look at their rosters and see whoever is better at that moment is the guy, the program who is getting those more Ohio kids than the other. And Michigan State has dipped down on that. Kentucky has picked up on that, and I think you've seen the results. Tom, anything else before we get out of here for today?
No, I think we're good. We will have a Tony Gerdeman appearance on the Morning Scoop on Wednesday.
I hear
very exciting. Well, people say a lot of stuff on the internet.
It's true.
We'll talk a little bit about the transfer portal and some of the comings and goings for Ohio State. And, is that I'm interested to ask you, is that a better thing? Is the transfer portal benefiting the good teams more, the Ohio States who can kind of plug the holes in their roster with a Justin Fields, with a Jonah Jackson, or is it benefiting the, next level down teams who are getting these players who they had no chance at getting out of high school, who are now looking for a place to play at the college level and get on the field? You get a real injection of talent there. So, which level program actually does benefit the most from those two things? So you can think about that, and I'll ask you about that on the Morning Scoop for Wednesday.
All right. A quick question for you. Who do you think the next Ohio State player is to transfer?
We don't generally speculate on those things, so I guess I'll tell you off the air.
All right. You can do that. I may actually cut you off. I've got to go. Like right mid-sentence, as you're telling me, like, I don't have time for this, Tom. I got to go. And because I'm a busy person. I've got places to be. So I'm going to get on my way now. You can go on your merry way thinking about tomorrow's show. Come up with some good questions. Let's talk. Let's have a good conversation. Unlike this one. So that will go ahead and do it for today. Make sure to check out BuckeyesScoop.com for all of your Ohio State sports needs. The Ask the Insiders board has been crazy. The Four Wise Men chat last week was insane, and it's still getting added to from people who have gone through the, dozens and dozens of pages and over 1,000 posts in that one thread to just add their own stuff in there. It's quite the read. If you're not yet a member, I would recommend becoming a member. If you are a member and haven't checked that out, set aside a good portion of your day to do that, because there's all kinds of information in there, all insights and tidbits you had no idea about. So check that out. And that will do it. And we will talk to you guys on Thursday.